everything is a function of the relationship you have with yourself. So when you have a good relationship with yourself, things go well on the outside. I'm not just special, everybody is. AI is a powerhouse and it's just going to get bigger and stronger. We want to make it better. We want to make it empowering to humanity and not dehumanizing things. We invest in companies that clarify the present. That's a very spiritual principle. And also shape and ascend our transcendent future, because that's what we see coming. Again, I came from a good family. I was lucky. I had a great job. I had quote unquote everything going for me. And yet I was unhappy inside. And it really bothered me because I couldn't figure it out. That's not something you figure out, I came to realize. It's an emanation of the soul that's trying to tell you something. And I had to go through a process to discover that, unearth it, and then eventually start to heal and become the true me, the more fulfilled me.
Hello, Nery. Welcome. This is Nery Gomez with Black Sun Private Equity. He's the founder and president and has a very interesting healing story and how he brings that into his business. So welcome, Nery. I'm so happy you're
Thank you,
here.
Melanie. I appreciate it. I'm super happy to be here too. Thanks.
And Nery, you're a very good friend of our founder, Augustine Walsh, right? You guys have known each other for quite a
Yep,
while.
yep. We go back. Well, not years and years, but with Gus, he's the type of man that if you become friends with him, you go deep pretty fast, and that's what happened with us. We hang out and,
Yes, same.
have fun.
Yeah, he's great. So, you're not a healer per se, as far as a practitioner. You are in private equity, but you have this beautiful past. Go ahead and share kind of like who you are, where you're from, what your study was, how you ended up in private
Sure.
equity.
Well, it's actually a long and interesting story if you have like 3 or 4 hours, over a beer, but I'll keep it concise. I'm actually from Boston and Los Angeles, so I kind of grew up in both worlds. Landed in Austin 5+ years ago. But growing up in, the East Coast, it was a very interesting contrast for me because I was living in a world that was, Boston's very gritty and no nonsense. And yet I was in a family that was Latin. I grew up in a Latin culture where my dad was a doctor, a plastic surgeon actually, and my mother was just a lovely, unconditional love type of person. So what ended up happening is there was a little bit of conflict between my sense of, who am I in this family, and then I'd walk out in the world and it was completely different. So it caused a little bit of discomfort when I was a kid, but one of the things that was interesting to me is that I noticed very young, like 7 or 8 years old, the silent witness that they talk about in spirituality. I saw it immediately. There I was. I didn't have a word for it. I didn't have an understanding of its spiritual significance. But suddenly I realized there was a part of me that was untouchable. And despite the discomfort that I was feeling in the environment, I was still able to kind of move my way through it. And it started a path of who am I and why am I uncomfortable here? Okay. So that led to a period where I realized my intuition was very high, 9, 10, 11 years old. I could see the falsity in adults, and I was very disappointed because as a kid I thought of them as kings and queens. But they say that adolescence is about discovering that adults are, human, and they have weaknesses. And then when you grow up as a young person, as a young man, I realized that I was human too, and I wasn't perfect. But now you go through all of life, you mature, you have all these experiences, and here I am now, a mature man, and I now realize that, wow, I was right the first time. We are kings and queens, only in a much deeper, more spiritually significant way. So that was kind of like the mini thread of how I started as this self-aware kid who became this adolescent that didn't quite understand what was going on, how I fit in. And then my yellow brick road towards personal comfort, acceptance, eventually realizing, wow, I'm not just special, everybody is. And I got very interested in mental health and meditating. I started meditating when I was 16 years old. When I went to college, I studied psychology and economics. My friends used to joke I was really a philosophy major because I was always floating around philosophizing about stuff while they were worried about sports, beer and girls. And it was funny because I did hug trees, but I also hugged ATM machines, because I realized these things are so wonderful and valuable, made life so much easier. So that was kind of the beginning. But when I got to be 26, 27 years old, I was in an interesting spot. Again, I came from a good family. I was lucky. I had a great job. I was working as a stockbroker for a major firm. I was young. I was handsome. I was, energetic. I had quote unquote everything going for me. And yet I was unhappy inside. And it really bothered me because I couldn't figure it out. That's not something you figure out, I came to realize. It's an emanation of the soul that's trying to tell you something. And I had to go through a process to discover that, unearth it, and then eventually start to heal and become the true me, the more fulfilled me. It's been a heck of a journey. I don't want to talk endlessly, but about this particular thing, but I do want to say that at 28, I had a very powerful spiritual experience, and I realized, there's something going on here. I'm not happy inside, and the reason I discovered was two things. That I had a lot of unresolved, resistance and resentment toward my dad. My dad was a wonderful man. He was a Renaissance man. He impacted so many people. I mean, he had a hell of a life, and I'm proud to be his son, but he was way too tough, especially when I was young. And that affected me. So I realized that I had that inside of me and I had to kind of flush it out. And the second thing was I realized that I was living for others. I was living for what I thought I should do in my life as opposed to what Neary wanted to do, what I wanted to do. I wasn't living a fully authentic life. And here I am, 28 years old, full of energy and vigor, and I'm not living the life that I want or that I aspire to. So that's where it all kind of came together. And then I said, okay, I got some work to do. And that began my healing journey, which translated into my career journey and everything else.
How did you go from psychology major to working for in the stockbroker? Is
Yeah,
that what you
yeah, I
said?
was working as a stockbroker. Well,
How did you
yeah,
do that and why?
yeah,
What
yeah,
happened there?
yeah, you'd think, right? And especially back in the day, it was really kind of siloed because people that studied psychology became psychologists, and people that were stockbrokers or were finance or business majors. I just learned early on that there was a natural connection between psychology, how we think and how we make decisions, with the business world. What is business? Business is people making decisions, interacting, relationships. I didn't see them as a big difference. And I had a discussion with my academic advisor, and I said, I'm kind of frustrated because I'm interested in 100 things. And all my friends seem to know that they want to go to medical school or law school or get an MBA. And I'm interested in art and literature and sports and everything. I saw it as a liability. I saw it as a liability. And she said, well, it may seem like a liability now, but I think as you move through your life, you'll realize that you just have a natural affinity for the entire world. And that's a good thing. And sooner or later, you will either discover or create a way of making a living that taps into those talents. So that ended up being private equity. I didn't know that at the time. I took her perspective to heart. And then she also cheered me up by saying, there's another Tufts grad older than me, he said, who majored in psychology and economics the way I was about to do, who's done very well for himself. And I said, oh, good. Who's that? And he said, his name is Jamie Dimon, who became the
Well,
CEO of JP Morgan Chase. So I said, okay, well, if that guy, can do it, I can do it too in my own way. So that's how I sort of transitioned.
so your minor was in economics
Well,
as
actually,
well?
yeah, it was actually a double major, but I ended up one
Okay.
course short in economics. So rather than go back,
So it wasn't completely just psychology
oh,
to private equity. There was economics
big,
in there.
big,
Okay,
yeah,
that makes
yeah.
sense. What was the awakening? What happened at 28 beside was it simply just that you were unhappy or did something else happen?
Yeah, it's a great question. No, it was a gradual restlessness that was growing in me in my 20s, and it just got worse and worse. And then when I got to 26, 27, everyone's expecting my girlfriend and I to get married. And I was like, something's wrong. And it's not like I was afraid of getting married or, the typical afraid of commitment, immature stuff. It wasn't that. It was deeper in here. And I had a deep conversation with her, and I said, if we get married, I think that's a mistake because I'm not happy. And if I'm not happy now, marriage isn't going to cure that. We're just going to end up getting divorced in a few years. So I don't want to put you through that. I don't want to go through that. So she said, well, Nery, I love you. I care about you a lot. Let's make sure it's not us first. So we went to couples therapy, to kind of get at the heart of the matter. And it was very positive. And as you may know, in couples therapy, they do individual sessions. So I had my individual sessions, and she was a good therapist. She asked really good questions. And she got to the heart of my matter, which was I had a lot of unresolved resentment with my father, and which is definitely true. And that I was living the life I thought I should be living, and not the life that Mary wanted to live. So that's sort of where the crux became. So what I decided to do was go into therapy with her individually. And and I did that for a year, and she was very loving and warm and nurturing. She was a good female therapist. And my girlfriend and I did break up, by the way. She ended up moving to California to pursue her PhD. I stayed in Boston, and I found a year of talking to her extremely valuable. And talking through it, it unearthed a ton of stuff, and I started to open up. And I had a very powerful spiritual experience where I realized, wow, what a relief, because not only am I not crazy, not only am I going to be okay, but I'm actually spectacular. I'm actually great. Wow, look at all that's inside of me. Had no idea. And then I realized that, okay, I got to calm down. And how am I going to design my life? How am I going to channel all this new energy, my new heightened awareness of my spirituality? Now was just the future was a giant, palette that I could design any way I wanted. So that was very liberating, but I also realized that I still needed some inner work just as a baseline. So I told my female doctor, I think it would benefit me a lot to find a good man therapist because then I could talk to him and build a healthy relationship with a man. Because my dad and I just were like two rocks banging together. So, so I did. I was lucky because at that point I was working as a counselor in the Boston, Harvard, Mass General mental health system. I was very good. I was a natural. I was a good listener. I was a great question asker and problem solver. And being going through it myself, it was easy for me to kind of connect the dots. So I would end up with a lot of support. I was exposed to some of the top psychologists, in Boston, presumably, arguably the world. Boston's a mecca of medicine. And I was excited. And there was this one doctor in particular that I just connected with him. He felt like an older brother. I asked him if we could do sessions together. He agreed. And then for a year, I talked to him once, sometimes twice a week. And I'm happy to say my instincts were correct. I felt good and settled talking with him. He was mature, he was enlightened, he was accepting, non-judgmental. He really brought out the best in me. And after a couple of years of therapy, man, woman, I knew that I had a lot of growing to do and that my journey had only begun. I was a work in progress, but I felt so much better. I was happier. I was alive. I was vivid. I started dating again. I started exercising and going to theater and movies and I mean, I was living life again. It felt wonderful. So that was the beginning of
Yeah.
my next chapter.
So you eventually then left the stockbroker job to and got into the medicine space again.
Yeah, yeah, well, exactly. Well, actually, no, because I left the stockbroker job. Um, this is part of my spiritual career journey. I call it my yellow brick road because I one of my hobbies was ballroom dancing, which dancing is a perfect physical, emotional metaphor for life, right? For spirituality. And I just instinctively knew it, that expressing myself through dancing and being in a relationship with a woman in my arms, it would teach you a lot about how to be in a relationship, how to be a good leader and not treat a woman like she's an object. She's actually a human being that there's a partner, and when you're dancing with her, you're actually responsible for her safety. You actually have to watch out and watch where you're going. So that hobby also helped my healing and my therapy. And through that hobby, I met a Svengali. He was a legitimate dance Svengali from Ireland. Powerful spiritual personality, very charismatic, a center of attention everywhere he went. But I knew he knew what he was doing because he was literally the coach of all the best dancers in the world. So after a year of hanging around with him, he kept trying to recruit me. He said, Nery, you and I could do great things, work in this dancing and ballroom dancing and competitions, and we could create this show. And he had this idea for Dancing with the Stars, before it actually happened. I mean, that was literally his idea. And and at first I thought it was amusing, but eventually I said, you know what? I could learn a lot from this guy, not just about life, but how to build a business. Because he was essentially offering me the opportunity to build a business from scratch, all of it, understand what goes into doing it successfully with just sweat equity, without having to put up the capital myself. And as a 28, 29-year-old, that was very appealing. So I took the plunge. I quit my job as a stockbroker and I went to work with him as an entrepreneur for 2.5 years, despite grief from some of my friends. I had one friend who he became a psychiatrist, so he sort of acted like now he has a license to criticize and judge people and me. That was his immaturity. But he gave me a lot of grief. He's like, "Well, what are you doing that for? A guy like you should be getting an MBA at Harvard. That's dumb." And and what it did was force me to stand in my truth and say, and not bend to the criticism and the judgment. And I said, no, this is the right thing for me. I can't explain it other than I know I'm going to learn a lot and I'm going to get a lot out of it. And right now, that's all that I care about. 2.5 years later, I left and I went to become a full-time counselor and I was starting to study venture capital and private equity. But I was doing a lot of artistic things. I was teaching dancing, I was acting. Acting was a big hobby of mine. I was writing a lot. I had several pieces that were publishable for the first time. And I was just expressing, I was letting it all out. I was expressing who I was in the world. And and then this psychiatrist friend of mine calls me one day and he says, you know what? I finally understand why you did what you did at the dance studio. And I said, oh, do tell. He says, a lot of people in your position will go to like Tibet or India and meditate, and hang out with the monks and, find your enlightenment and that sort of thing. And he said, that dance studio was your monastery. And I said, you're absolutely right. Thank you so much for appreciating that and acknowledging me. And I learned a lot about business. It really, ironically, it set the foundation for what was to come, to really understand businesses from top to bottom, you know, side to side, and understand if this is going to be a good business in advance, which is the essence of what I do. I invest in founders, that are interested in developing a business that's going to impact the world.
Yeah. So you kind of got your MBA, just hands-on MBA, because learning and application are very different. So you kind of got the front
Well
row
said.
seat.
You're exactly right. I got the front row seat. I was applying like crazy, and I wasn't averse to learning. As a matter of fact, it made me more thirsty for knowledge. I kept learning and reading, and back then it was cassettes, and then it became podcasts, and you know, I was I mean, I even went back to school. I went back to Dean College in Franklin, Mass, and just started taking courses, one at a time, just courses that I loved and was interested in. Again, getting rid of the should do and replacing it with what I love to do, what I want to do. And it was a turning point in my life. It was so eye-opening. And I got straight A's. Well, who knew? Like I was actually a really good student.
The counselor job, what was that? The counselor of what? When you had the counselor
It
job?
was actually a very interesting program. It was unique. I think it lasted for about 10 years. It was mental health, but it was designed for, again, it was the Harvard, Mass General, McLean, Westwood Lodge mental health system, which are like really premier in Boston. And what they did, they accepted like 5 people a year. And it was, to prepare you for a career in mental health, psychology, medical school, social work, psychiatric nursing, that kind of stuff. But what they did was it was a really good, it was kind of like a therapist development program ahead of time. So by the time you got to, your PsyD or PhD or MD program, you were already very well trained about what mattered. And you had a lot of real life experience, real life research, and it was a beautiful program, and it was very selective. And I was fortunate because I had I mean, I was a good candidate, but I had a good friend that said, this Nery guy's special. You should take him seriously. So I got in, and I made the most of it.
That's awesome. Did you ever become a therapist or psychologist or anything, or did you end up in the
No,
like
not
next
officially.
step back
No,
then?
no, that experience learning from the top group psychotherapist in Boston, some of the best psychiatrists, the medical director and associate medical director of Westwood Lodge Hospital, which was my primary. They were very, very influential people in medicine, and all three of them backed me to go to Harvard Medical School and become a psychiatrist. And they said I'd be an exceptional child psychiatrist. I was great with kids, adolescents, but I also understand the adult. I understood the whole developmental path of from child, cradle to grave, to senior citizens, people dealing with end of life issues. I was fascinated, but in the end, I decided not to do it. Certain things were just practical. For some reason, I had a block against chemistry. I still don't know why to this day. And you can't become a doctor without getting an A in chemistry. But I was good at all the other stuff, and then I was doing research at Brown Medical School, which was interesting. I did that for about 3 months. But then I left because I really made a big decision. I decided I didn't like the state of the art back then. Psychology was back then was really all about how to help people that are distraught become normal. And I was more interested in helping normal people become really happy and spiritually more fulfilled and higher performing and how to build and design a great life. That's what I was interested in. So psychology this is back. This is in the 90s. It was just I was like, that's not where I want to go. I want to head toward something more elevated. And again, I've been doing a lot of artistic stuff. I've been acting and teaching dancing and writing, And I just realized that if I combined all my talents with my interest in investments and private equity and venture capital, I could probably create something pretty special. And that's the path that I went on. I'm happy to say it's worked out really well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great. For your healing process, reconciling your relationship with your dad or whatever healing that you've done, you've talked about a lot of practical things, the dancing
Mhm.
or doing things that you enjoy. What modalities, what other healing practices have you used along the way? And what are your
Yeah,
favorite?
great question. Well, first of all, insight therapy, anything that improves insight to me is extremely valuable. It can come from a variety of places, but again, meditation has been powerful for me. I started meditating at 16, was pretty regular. Um, it was sort of part of my vibe when I was in college. But I didn't really start doing it as a daily practice till I was 28, when I hit the crisis. And I was like, if I want to heal, I better get serious about this. And I tell you, I've not stopped. I can't remember the last time a day went by where I didn't meditate at least once. Meditation has been huge. I'm big on mind, body, spirit. Everything is integrated, everything is one. Um, if you, and I include finances in that now too. I'm a financial professional. So even on one of my websites for my wealth management practice, it says, mind, body, spirit, finances. If one of them is out of balance, you're out of balance. Your life is out of balance. And you can be psychologically sharp and be really buff and super healthy and have a lot of money, but if you're not spiritually open and moving in the right direction, if you're not coming from soul, you're out of balance, my friend. You know, Conversely, you can flip all those variables. You can you know, have plenty of money and, good mind, you know, heart of gold. But if you're sick, if your body and you got diabetes and you're falling apart, you're out of balance. So living a life, of wholeness and the gestalt is really the aim and the intention. So I'm very intentional about that. Besides meditation, I do use physical things to help express, release stress. It does pull things up and out when I release them. So I love dancing. I love martial arts. I studied a little bit of martial arts as a teenager for about a year. And then in my 40s, I started taking Krav Maga. And I really got into it like once or twice a week. And it's healing because you're using your mind to focus and develop, and you're creating new neural pathways. And you're also developing physical confidence in something that could save your life. I've never had to use it, but I know if I have to, it's there. And that's not a theory. I mean, I had a buddy who was a big uh, colonel in the army. We were talking, and he just went to jab me one day, just being a wise guy. And without even thinking about it, I went and like totally deflected it, and my hand went out like toward him to keep him from attacking me. And he said, and I didn't, it was just instinct. And he said, "Whoa, somebody has training." So, and that again, Krav Maga physicality. I love cycling, indoor cycling, spinning classes, merging with the music. It's very spiritual. It's very powerful. It gets it out of you, the breathing, and then you're also getting in great shape. Your muscles are stronger and you look better. So you feel better. You go on dates. I'm not married. So, when I go on a date, I like to feel good, physically good, and I don't have to worry about it or be self-conscious. And and then outdoor cycling. I mean, pretty much any physical activity, even walking is so good for you, the vitamin D outside. But to kind of put a bow on it, I like the newer stuff that people are doing. Now I'm in Austin, so I just did a 9D breath work exercise for an hour. yesterday with some friends. It was so powerful. Whoa. Like it was
Yeah.
right. It was guided and that whole thing, very powerful. And by the way, Black Sun, our private equity firm, is interested and invests in health and well-being, longevity, increasing the human health span as well as the lifespan. And we're even interested in reverse aging. So any research or anything that, heals the telomeres in our chromosomes and literally has us grow younger inside. There's a guy, Brian Johnson, he's pretty famous. Yeah, he spends a lot of money on himself, but he's using himself as a guinea pig. He's a pioneer. He's 48 now, I believe, and according to all the markers, his body is 28 years old. So that's astonishing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. $1 million a year, I think, is
Yeah,
what
it's
he spends
crazy.
on
One,
us.
one, two, even three, but he's a billionaire, so hey.
Yeah. Yeah, we got to make it cheaper so everyone can live forever, I guess, or longer,
Yeah,
healthier and
yeah,
longer.
very interesting.
Like, who cares about long if you're not
Well, that's
healthy?
it, and that's why I said the health span. Because there will, what good is it if you live to be 150 years old if you're sick for 70 of it? You know, you want to be healthy and vital and young and pliant and all the things that we associate with youth, moving forward. And then eventually we will hit. I mean, it's just a matter of time, it seems. I'm plugged into a lot of the longevity experts and doctors, and they say that by 2040, if not before, we will hit the what they call age escape velocity, where, as you age a year, the human health span has also aged a year. So you don't catch up. And actually the health span will start to expand. So you grow a year older, but your health span is growing 3, 4, 5 years ahead of you, and you can't catch it. So the only way you'll die is from, an accident or a disease. It won't be from your body degenerating and giving out. Amazing.
2040. Will I be?
Exactly.
I'll still be alive,
Well,
hopefully.
that's why we're friends. We got to stay plugged in and connected. But we like investing in this stuff because it's going to make a huge difference in the future. And if we're lucky, we'll benefit from it personally. Our kids, for sure. Like my niece is 22. Her generation is going to benefit from all that human longevity stuff, big time.
Yeah. I want to hear your wisdom about like the financial piece, the spiritual connection to finances. I like speaking personally, I was raised in a blue collar family, so there's a sort of scarcity, working on abundance. Does that play into it, or just kind of what are your thoughts around money, finances, and spirituality?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I think I heard the essence of your question. There is, I mean, money. It's well, first of all, everything is a function of the relationship you have with yourself. So when you have a good relationship with yourself, things go well on the outside. So I'm always working on having a better relationship with myself because it'll emanate and manifest positively. Um, my father in his wisdom, and by the way, my father and I did reconcile when I was older, and we had a much better relationship. I came to really admire him. He had a lot of great wisdom moments, and one of them was, Nery, when you get better, your life will get better. It always starts with you. And that was a profound piece of advice because it kept me from, always looking outside of myself to blame something or someone. And even to this day, if I'm doing something's just not right and it's off a little bit, I think to myself, what am I doing? What am I doing here to create this? And that's a great starting point. So that also spills into money because money is energy. Money is not good or bad. It's just a tool. My dad, again, he was a surgeon. When I was 8 years old, he held up a scalpel and he said, Neri, this is a knife. It's a scalpel. It's a tool. And like all important tools in life, it's not the tool. It's the person who wields it. As a doctor, I can heal, I can create, I can make beautiful things. but it's a knife, and you can also hurt people and create great damage. So it's again, it's a tool. Money's the same. It's a tool. It's the person behind it. So your relationship with money is going to affect how you how money comes into your life and what you do with it. Because it's a cycle, like everything. It's always moving. It's like breathing. You breathe in, you breathe out. You breathe in, you breathe out. Money comes in, money goes out. How good is your relationship with that money? And many of us are taught scarcity. We're taught limits. You know, I love when people say, well, I'm just being realistic. I mean, the first thing I hear when I say I'm just being realistic is you are committed to a limit. Whatever that is for you, you are committed to a limit because what's realistic to one person is not what's realistic to another person. And the better you get with understanding what money is and, and surfacing the relationships, the thoughts, the beliefs, a belief is just something you've thought many, many, many times and you put energy into it. You believe it because, geez, I
Yeah.
don't have enough money. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough money over and over and over and over. And then that becomes your default. And you're not even thinking about it. And you believe that. And lo and behold, you never have enough money. So it's, yeah. I mean, spiritually, the more I think open and abundant you become as a human, you recognize that God, there's money everywhere. Money is just a force. It's moving constantly. And if you want to create a certain life and take care of your family, then you have to be open and conducive to receiving and being a good steward of that money and how you invest it, being generous, how you give and to philanthropies and so forth. There's a balance, there's a structure that you can create that really makes money flow in a very good way. And ironically, and this is a spiritual principle, I didn't really realize this till I was a little bit older, but that the more you do that, the more that you circulate that money, the more it comes back. It's kind of like a
That's
mind
why
blower.
it's called a
What's that?
currency. It's why it's called a
Yeah,
currency, a
very
current.
good. But it's incredible because if you're coming from, a limited mindset that it's scarce, that a dollar is just a discrete, you know, concrete thing, and you got to hang on to it because there's only so much, as opposed to no, it's a flow of energy, and you have to be thoughtful and wise. Don't be dumb. Don't just give your money to somebody because they want it. But the more that you let that currency flow, good things come from it. People notice. People are happy. You become a good customer. You're a good investor. Hey, every time I invite Nery to my restaurant, he brings friends and everyone has a good time and they spend money. And what happens that when I run into them or they need somebody for financial advice or something, they come to me because I've established a reputation as someone that's comfortable and I'm not going to hold my money back like this and I'm not going to attack them and take their money. That I become a trusted source. And that's a function of my reputation with myself. I'm creating a trustworthy relationship with me, which translates into a trustworthy relationship with others.
Yeah, you've mentioned this, everything starts with the self. What are things people can start doing now to start building, or what is it about the self? What do we need to do to show up better in the world, to bring in the money, to all the health that comes from us? What are those things that we can start doing?
Well, for starters, keep it simple. Secondly, have a real heart to heart with yourself. And if you can't do that, get a trusted person that is savvy about money and investing uh, to do it with you. What you need to do is really take an inventory of yourself, your beliefs, especially the negative beliefs. Money is the root of all evil. People with money are evil. They're jerks. Whatever. There's stuff that floats around, mental garbage in your subconscious. You have to be able to unearth those and get real clear about that. Those are yours now. You've taken ownership of them. And if you want a better, more financially prosperous life, you have to dissolve them one way or another. So you have to take a self inventory about about your thoughts and feelings on the matter. But then you also have to take an inventory of how you actually behave. What do you actually do with your money every day, every month? You know, are you just and what is your paradigm in your head? Are you just trying to live month to month, paycheck to paycheck, or do you really want more? There was more like years, decades, and not just a dream, but what do you really want, and what do you energetically want to create in the here and now that's going to make that come true? There was a great psychological study. I read it when I was in college, where they took they were measuring time horizon in a person's mentality, and they found that people that were drug addicts, seriously mental health problems, et cetera, their time horizon was like one day. They couldn't think beyond today because they needed the fix. They needed this. They were in so much pain. Their time horizon was one day. And then they progress up the scale of mental health, and the average person, you know, their time horizon was about 9 months. They could think, okay, between me and now, what I want to do, and 9 months from now, maybe I'll plan a trip next year. That was kind of normal for people. And then they found people that were healthier, vigorous, contributing to society, were very giving and loving to their family, and all the things, all the self-actualization behaviors. Their timeline was about 10 years. I mean, there was
Wow.
like they're always thinking, like thinking 10 years ahead was normal. And not just occasionally, on when they did a session with their financial planner, but they're literally thinking, okay, how is this going to affect the game plan for 10 years from now? Or, what am I going to do between now and 2035? And really relish it and enjoy it and, imagine it. And what's it going to feel like when I go to Wimbledon for the first time with my girlfriend and I'm in London? All that, it just motivates you, and I really think it's essential in making it come true. So keeping it simple, establish good habits, um, and then automate as much as you can, because money that comes in that's automatically going into an investment account or a savings account, you don't even notice it's gone. But you adjust. You learn to live on 80% of your income or 70% of your income or whatever the number is you choose, and then your investments keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Because if you don't do that, I tell you that the path of least resistance is to spend all your money.
Yeah. Easy. The part's
No, I know, but
easy.
that's what I mean. It's just like, oh, I got my check. I earned $5,000 this month. Next month, right before my paycheck comes in, my balance is at like $30. It's like all gone.
Yeah, that's definitely if the sad thing is if people weren't exposed to good finances or they weren't taught to do that, it's not common sense, I think. Yeah,
Well, it doesn't become a
it's
habit.
definitely something
If you're
people
if you're not exposed, if you weren't taught, if you didn't learn, then you just, again, the path of least resistance. It's just you just do what you do, and then you form a habit, and before you know it, that becomes conditioned thinking, and you should just start doing it over and over. But like they say, if you keep doing what you've always done, you're going to keep getting the same results. Fortunately,
yeah.
as adults, we're capable of learning. If we make a decision, hey, you know what? I want to learn how to manage my finances better. I recognize that I have resistance to it. When it comes to, okay, I'm going to put 10% of this paycheck into my savings account, and I find that I'm distracted and I want to go watch Netflix or, talk to my girlfriend or, go shopping. You got to catch yourself doing that stuff. Again, it's your mind, and you have to take ownership of those choices.
I think you were talking about working on the self. So this is very practical advice, what we do in the world. But I think there's also like learning and understanding ourselves because it can be that shopping is an addiction potentially for some people, or it's some way they get a dopamine hit or like a validation or something. So I think that's part of the knowing thyself and learning who you are. And are there any other like more spiritual practices, affirmations, or like getting that stinking thinking out, right? Like thinking more abundance, any types of things like that to add?
Yeah, yes to all of the above. I think affirmations are actually very effective because you're retraining yourself how to think. And then when you think something opposite, like if I say to myself in the mirror, I am a wealthy man, right? And then I'm a wealthy man, and then etc. And I go to bed, I'm meditating, I'm a wealthy man. And then somewhere during the course of the day, I'm like, God damn it, you can't pay this bill or whatever it is I'm bitching about. Catch myself because I'm literally allowing that to run through my mind and create those emotions. So by meditating, I know how to get back to center and I calm down. And then I choose a different thought, whatever it may be, something that's proactive and helpful in the moment as opposed to being reactive and angry. And then part of the spiritual path is recognizing the whole. And the whole in this context is fulfillment, happiness, satisfaction comes from a sense of well-being that is spiritual, that is physical, etc. That's where it comes from, the inside out. And, pleasure hits of any kind. I bought something, I got a good grade, the girl kissed me, the boy asked me out. That's all good, but it's just a surge. It's that dopamine hit. That's all it is. It is transitory. It's going to end in a few seconds, a few minutes, tomorrow. Always, always, always finite. So you might enjoy them while they're happening, but to delude yourself into thinking that it's anything more than that, I think is a mistake. You have to recognize that that's just part of the wave of life on the surface, but down below, inside of you, that's where the calm and the love and the peace and the faith, that's where it is. And that's where you gotta live. That's where you gotta come from.
I like that. Is there anything you want to share about Black Sun or anything else that I didn't ask you that you would like to share with the listeners
Well,
today?
thanks. I think, well, Black Sun is just we're a terrific private equity firm. We're young, we're hip, we're cool. We have fun. We invest in we're not stodgy at all. Everywhere we go, people are like, "Wow, you guys are cool. We like this." And, we're invited into a lot of rooms because of that. But yeah, but we're interested in health care, wellness, investing in, again, longevity and reverse aging. We're also interested in sports because it's fun. It's the ultimate reality show. We like entertainment and media because I think it's important to take responsibility for what we create and what we digest as consumers. Is it going to be bang, 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 loud, loud violence, lust, lust, lust all the time? Or is it going to be, can we really be healthier and put things inside of us that are going to make us happier, healthier people and families? So we invest in that. We also invest in technology because AI is a powerhouse and it's just going to get bigger and stronger. We want to make it better. We want to make it empowering to humanity and not dehumanizing things. Um, Healthcare innovation is a big one. And then the last one is commercial real estate because most of these businesses have to be housed somewhere. You can't have a sports team without an arena. So you can't have healthcare without hospitals. So we're very interested in the commercial real estate aspect of it. So we're happy to be here. We're happy to be of service. And, I love the people that I work with and invest in and associate with. And our goal, I think this is a nice way to wrap it up, is Black Sun is an eclipse. What is a black sun? People say, why that? It's an eclipse. We're just going through a big eclipse thing right now. It's a time to release, right, all the old and welcome in the new and the fresh. But an eclipse is also a temporary period of darkness, very temporary. You know, it comes right out. It's preceded by a period of light and enlightenment, and then there's a little darkness, and it ushers in a whole new period of light and enlightenment. And that is really our kind of driving mission. You know, we say it's our thesis. We invest in companies that clarify the present, that add clarity to the present. That's a very spiritual principle, clarity, and also shape and ascend our transcendent future, because that's what we see coming.
Beautiful. I love it. So happy to have you on today. Thank you for all your wisdom and sharing your story. And if people want to get in touch with you, should they just go to the website
Yeah,
or
yeah, or yeah, the
direct?
website is blacksun.pe for private equity. You know, there's a phone number there. You can send an email. You can also find me on LinkedIn. My profile's right there. Nery Gomez, founder, president, and COO of Black Sun Private Equity. You know, my face will pop up. I'll look like this with a jacket on. And you can send me a message, and I'm very, you know, I'm responsive to messages, not always the same day because I get a lot of them, but I do sooner or later. So I'm happy to talk and meet with people, and I have a lot of friends. So if people need something, a referral, I can probably be of service.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. And I'm sure I'll see you
I know,
around.
Melanie, right? We run in similar circles, Austin, Texas, right?
We do, definitely.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you and see you
Okay.
around.
Take care. Bye bye.